Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
At the turn of the 20th century, amidst the intellectual ferment of Wilhelmine Germany, Max Weber published a two-part essay that would forever alter the terrain of social theory. His 1905 work, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, stands as a monumental and perpetually contested pillar of modern sociology. It presents a profound intellectual puzzle, a deliberate counterpoint to the prevailing materialist orthodoxies of the era. Weber sought to understand the origins of a very particular modern phenomenon, the rational, methodical, and ethically charged pursuit of economic gain that he termed the spirit of capitalism. His inquiry ventured into the intricate corridors of religious belief, proposing that within the psychological crucible of ascetic Protestantism lay a powerful, albeit unintentional, catalyst for this new economic order. The essay is far more than a simple historical correlation. It is a masterclass in interpretive sociology, a study of how deeply held worldviews can powerfully shape economic behavior and ultimately forge the structures of modern life. Its legacy is complex, defined equally by the fierce critiques it has attracted and the enduring analytical framework it provides for understanding the cultural embeddedness of economic systems. Weber's intellectual project emerged from a specific scholarly milieu. He was engaged in a deep and sustained dialogue with the ghost of Karl Marx, whose historical materialism posited that the economic base of society determined its cultural and ideological superstructure. Weber found this formulation elegant yet insufficient. He aimed to demonstrate that the causal arrow could also point in the opposite direction, that systems of ideas could exert a formidable influence on the course of economic development. His work was also shaped by the German historical school, with its emphasis on the unique cultural and historical specificity, or culture, of different societies. This intellectual heritage encouraged a move away from universal laws of economic behavior toward a nuanced appreciation of historical particularities. Contemporaries like his friend and rival Werner Sombart were engaged in similar inquiries, exploring the genesis of capitalism in works like Der Modern Kapitalismus. Sombart, for instance, explored various potential sources for the capitalist ethos, including the luxury trade and the contributions of Jewish communities. Weber's analysis, however, distinguished itself through its laser-like focus on the intricate psychological mechanisms linking a specific theological framework to a specific economic orientation. He sought to uncover the inner motivations, the subjective meanings, that drove individuals to behave in ways conducive to capitalist accumulation. The initial step in Weber's argument is the careful isolation of his dependent variable, the spirit of capitalism. This was a concept he meticulously differentiated from mere acquisitiveness or the simple desire for wealth, which he saw as impulses present in all cultures and historical epochs. The spirit of modern capitalism was unique. It was an ethic, a moral duty, a calling whereof to engage in ceaseless, systematic, and rational profit-seeking for its own sake. Weber brilliantly illustrates this ethos through the maxims of Benjamin Franklin, whose writings extol thrift, punctuality, and creditworthiness as cardinal virtues. For Franklin, time is money, credit is money, and the accumulation of capital is a sign of moral property. This orientation is profoundly irrational from the perspective of personal happiness or hedonistic enjoyment. The pursuit of wealth becomes an end in itself, divorced from the consumption it enables. It is this peculiar, almost ascetic devotion to one's worldly vocation that Weber identified as the psychological bedrock of modern rational capitalism, and its appearance in history demanded a compelling explanation. The heart of Weber's thesis lies in his identification of the engine that produced this spirit, the doctrines of ascetic Protestantism, particularly Calvinism. He traces a powerful psychological linkage from the core tenets of Calvinist theology to the methodical conduct of daily life. The doctrine of predestination, which held that an omnipotent God had preordained the eternal fate of every soul before creation, created a state of profound inner loneliness and existential anxiety among believers. Since human actions could accomplish nothing to alter one's salvation, the individual was left to wonder, am I one of the elect? This agonizing uncertainty generated an intense pastoral need for a sign of one's inclusion among the saved, a certitudo salutis. The solution, as it evolved in pastoral practice, was to pursue intense worldly activity. Tireless, methodical labour in a worldly calling came to be interpreted as the premier means of dissipating religious doubt and attaining self-confidence in one's state of grace. Success in his calling, evidenced by the accumulation of wealth, were taken as a sign, though never indeed divine. This theological impulse gave rise to what Weber termed inner worldly asceticism. Unlike the world-rejecting asceticism of the monk who retreats to a monastery, The Puritan ascetic practiced his devotion within the worldly affairs of economic life, the religious valuation of relentless, continuous, systematic work in a worldly calling as the highest form of asceticism and the most certain proof of rebirth and genuine faith was a powerful psychological driver. Furthermore, the Puritan ethic condemned spontaneous enjoyment, idleness, and the consumption of luxuries as temptations of the flesh. This created a profound paradox. The command to labour diligently in one's calling led to the accumulation of wealth, while the simultaneous religious injunction against spending that wealth on personal enjoyment or frivolous pursuits meant that the capital had to be reinvested. This cycle of disciplined labour and compulsory saving, driven by religious anxiety, systematically fostered capital accumulation, a behaviour pattern originally motivated by the search for salvation, unintentionally created the ideal personality type for the rational capitalist enterprise. Weber was extraordinarily careful in defining the relationship between these two spheres. He proposed an elective affinity Wahlverwandtschaft, a term he borrowed from Goethe's chemistry-inspired novel, to describe the connection. This was a relationship of mutual attraction, convergence, and reinforcement, a far more subtle concept than a straightforward, monocausal explanation. The Protestant ethic did provide the psychological sanctions and motivations that made the disciplined pursuit of profit a moral calling. It endowed the spirit of capitalism with a clear conscience and a sense of divine purpose, liberating the acquisition of wealth from traditional ethical constraints. This conceptual nuance is the most frequently misunderstood aspect of his work. Weber was clear that capitalism as an economic system required many other preconditions, including rational law, a free labour market, and advanced bookkeeping. His contribution was to illuminate a crucial cultural ingredient that helped ignite and sustain the system's distinctive ethos, particularly in its formative stages in Northern Europe and America. The publication of the essays immediately ignited a firestorm of scholarly debate that has smouldered for over a century. Historians and sociologists mounted significant challenges to Weber's thesis. Critics like Felix Rachal and, later, H.M. Robertson in his 1933 book Aspects of the Rise of Economic Individualism presented evidence that capitalist forms of organization and even a nascent capitalist spirit predated the Reformation in the Catholic city-states of Renaissance Italy. They argued that Weber had mistaken the chronology and that the spirit of capitalism evolved independently of religious shifts. Other scholars contested Weber's interpretation of Protestant theology, suggesting he overemphasized the role of Calvinist anxiety and downplayed other theological streams. The empirical foundations of his work, which relied heavily on observations about the occupational statistics of different religious groups in Baden, were also subjected to intense scrutiny and found by some to be suggestive over definitively conclusive. The debate forced subsequent researchers to refine, test, and often revise Weber's bold claims, turning the thesis into one of the most fruitful intellectual controversies in social science. Despite these persistent critiques, the influence of the Protestant ethic on subsequent thought has been immense and undeniable. The American sociologist Talcott Parsons was instrumental in its Anglophone reception, translating the work into English in 1930 and incorporating it as a central element in his own grand theory of social action. For Parsons, Weber's essay was the perfect antidote to utilitarian and materialist reductionism, demonstrating the independent power of cultural value systems. This Parsonian interpretation cemented the thesis as a canonical text in American sociology for decades. Weber's mode of analysis also provided a powerful model for other scholars. Robert K. Merton's famous 1938 monograph, Science, Technology and Society in 17th Century England, applied a distinctly Weberian logic to a different domain, arguing that the values of Puritanism fostered the development of modern science. The interpretive anthropology of Clifford Geertz, with its focus on understanding cultures as webs of significance, also owes a profound debt to Weber's methodological approach. The thesis established a durable paradigm for investigating the intricate connections between culture, religion, and economic life that continues to inspire research in fields from economic history to culturals. Perhaps the most haunting and enduring element of Weber's analysis is its powerful conclusion. In the final pages, he paints a somber picture of the fate of the modern world, introducing the unforgettable metaphor of the iron cage Stahlhart's Jehu's. The capitalist order, having been animated in its youth by a powerful religious spirit, had now become a self-perpetuating mechanism. The relentless pursuit of efficiency and accumulation, once a path to salvation, and transformed into an inescapable system of economic compulsion. This modern economic order is bound to the technical and economic conditions of machine production, which today determine the lives of all individuals who are born into this mechanism. The spirit has escaped the cage. The religious asceticism of the Puritans had, In Weber's poignant phrase, done its work and bequeathed to its era triumphant capitalism. Now, Victoria's capitalism rests on mechanical foundations. The result is a profound disenchantment of the world, a hollowing out of ultimate meaning. We are left, in his famous closing lines, as specialists without spirit, sensualists without heart. This pessimistic diagnosis of modernity elevates the essay from a specific historical hypothesis to a timeless meditation on the tragic, unintended consequences of rationalization. In the final analysis, the enduring power of the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism resides less in its historical verifiability and more in its profound formulation of a fundamental sociological problem. It stands as a masterwork of theoretical imagination, compelling us to consider the non-economic origins of economic life and the deep cultural currents that shape human motivation. While the empirical details of his argument remain a subject of vigorous scholarly contention, the core insight that belief systems can forge new worlds and that the rationalization process carries deep and often tragic consequences resonates with undiminished force. The essay remains an essential and unsettling text because it grapples with the very soul of modernity itself. It asks us to confront the possibility that the immense material prosperity of the modern West was forged in a furnace of religious anxiety, and that in escaping the theological confines of our past we may have locked ourselves into a new, more impersonal prison of our own making. It is a work of towering intellectual ambition, a cautionary tale that continues to challenge, provoke, and illuminate our understanding of the world we have inherited.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.